Hi guys! As you can see, our lesson today is on the trigonometric ratios. There are 3 of them, okay? In addition to tangent, we have sine and cosine. Now, you'll see that there are 3 different ratios, and all of a sudden, if you take a look, the tangent ratio, as we learned, does not have the hypotenuse in it. But now, the sine and the cosine ratios will have a hypotenuse. You will be using the hypotenuse within these ratios. Okay, how do you decide which one of these to use? Okay, how do you decide? So, you take a look at the angle that is given to you. Okay, so this angle is the angle given, this 10-degree angle. So from that angle, that side across from it is the opposite. That's our O. The side that is next to it, the leg that is next to it that is not the hypotenuse, that's our A, that's our adjacent. And of course, the hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. So that's our hypotenuse. So it's going to depend on which of these 2 sides that they are giving to you. But it is all depending on which angle you have. Okay? Now, you see this word SOHCAHTOA. That is a little method of a way that we can remember which ratios go with which trig function. So the sine ratio is the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine ratio is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And the tangent ratio is the opposite over the adjacent. All right, let's take a little bit more of a look at this. All right, so SOHCAHTOA. And I pronounce that SOHCAHTOA to help me to remember which sides go with which trig ratios. All right, so this stands for the sine of the angle is equal to the opposite leg over the hypotenuse. The C here stands for the cosine. So that's the cosine of the angle is equal to the adjacent leg over the hypotenuse. And the T here stands for tangent. The tangent of the angle is equal to the opposite leg over the adjacent leg. And that angle in all 3 of them, it depends on the angle that's given to you. Okay, so let's take a look at this example. So in this example here, from the 72-degree angle that they give you, you have an opposite and you have a hypotenuse. So O and H, opposite and hypotenuse, are sine. So you're going to set this up. The sine of the angle is 72, is equal to the opposite x over the hypotenuse of 72. And then you go to your calculator. Sine 72 is 0.951, and I'm going to round that off to 4 places there, 9511. Okay, so I'm going to set that up, 0.9511, and I'll put that over 1 to create my proportion here so that now I can cross multiply. So I'm simply going to take that number, multiply by 10, and I get 9.5. This is a side value, and all side values will get rounded to the nearest tenth. All right, let's look at the next one over here. All right, from this angle right here, you have an adjacent and you have a hypotenuse. All right, so if you have an adjacent, there's no opposite, there's no O. So when you have no O, you can't use either one of these. These both require an O. You have to use cosine. So you have an adjacent and hypotenuse. So the cosine of the angle, 23, is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So now we're going to go to our calculator and we're going to set that up. Cosine 23 is 0.9205 equals 8 over x. And again, I always take that out to the 4th decimal place because the further you round out, the more accurate your answer will be. All right, now we're going to cross multiply. Now this time I can't just put that right in my calculator. I have to actually cross multiply here. Equals 8. And now I got to get that x there by itself, so I've got to divide both sides here by that 0.9205. And when I do that, 8 divided by 0.9205, I end up with 8.7, because once again, this is a side value we're finding. So the length of that hypotenuse is equal to 8.7. Okay? All right, let's look at one more tangent ratio. And again, it's all about the angle that they give you. So from the angle, what do you have? You have an opposite and you have an adjacent. You have no hypotenuse. Remember what I said earlier, the sine and the cosine both require a hypotenuse. Tangent is the one that has no hypotenuse. Whenever you have no hypotenuse, you use tangent. All right, so the tangent of 18 is equal to the opposite x over the adjacent of 9. All right, so tangent of 18 equals x over 9. Go to your calculator, use your tangent button, tangent of 18, enter. I'm going to put that out. Remember, 4 decimal places, 3, 2, 4, 9. And again, the more decimal places you take that out, the more accurate your answer will be. And now we're going to cross multiply. Now in this case, I can just cross multiply by that 9 pretty easily there. So times 9, and I get 2.9 for the length of my side value there. And we're going to round all side lengths to the nearest 10th. Okay, all sides get rounded to the nearest 10th. So remember something, it's all about the angle that they give you. The same thing is true when you're trying to find an angle. Okay, the same thing is true when you are trying to find an angle. So whenever you are trying to find an angle, and you have your triangle here, let's say I want to find this angle up top. And from that angle there, let's see, what do I have? I have, let's say, an 8 on this side and a 12 on the hypotenuse. So again, focus on the angle you're given. Here's my angle. From that angle, I have an opposite and I have a hypotenuse. So again, remember which trig function you would use. You go back to your SOHCAHTOA there, and you have to remember which one you're going to use. So the O and the H, we're going to use sine. So the sine of the angle is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. So the sine of x is our angle now, so the sine of x equals the opposite 8 over the hypotenuse of 12. Okay, now, we learned yesterday that when we're looking for an angle, we're going to move that sign over here, or whatever the trig function is, and we're going to make it be to the -1. So x is equal to sine to the -1 of that 8 divided by 12. Okay, so whenever you're looking for the angle, you're going to move that over, and you're going to make it to the -1. And then you're going to go to your calculator there, second sine of 8 divided by 12. Hit enter. Now this is an angle measure, so you're going to round it off to the nearest whole degree. So that angle degree there would be 42 degrees. So just remember when you're doing this, it's all about the angle that is given to you in terms of which one of these 3 that you are going to decide to use. Again, just take a look at that. All right, let's do one more of these. Okay, so I'm going to make my triangle look a little different this time, upside down. Okay, and let's say this time I'm going to give you this angle right here. Let's say that that angle is 58 degrees. And let's say I want you to find this side, and I'm going, oh no, oh, sorry. And let's say I'm going to give you, this side is 12, and this side over here is y. Oh, let's look at this one. This is another problem. How do you do this? Well, keep in mind, when they give you 2 different variables to find, it's not a big deal. All you need to do is cover one up. So I'm going to pretend that y is not there for right now. I'm just going to pretend that's not there. So from the angle that's given, okay, you have the adjacent, and you have the hypotenuse. I'm going to find x first. I'm just going to pretend that one's not there. So adjacent and hypotenuse, of course, is cosine. So I'm going to say the cosine of 58 is equal to the adjacent x over the hypotenuse of 12. Okay? And I'm going to just solve that, just like normal. So the cosine of 58, 0.5299 over 1 equals x over 12. Multiply by that 12, and my answer works out to be 6.4. Because again, this is a side we just found, not an angle. So we round it off to the nearest 10th. Now, you have 2 options. After you get this value right here to be 6.4, you can either do Pythagorean theorem to find y. So one of your options is to say 6.4 squared plus 12, no, not 12, sorry, plus y squared is equal to 12 squared. So you could do Pythagorean theorem to solve for that. Or, at this point, you could cover up your x, or your 12 for that matter, and then just do it again, right? Pick another trig function. So from the 58, that side's the opposite. So I could use opposite and hypotenuse. I could use sine for that. So the sine of 58 is equal to y over 12. And just repeat the process. So either way, you are going to get the same thing, okay? Whether you do Pythagorean theorem to find that y there, or you put this into one of the trig functions. So sine 58, enter, 0.8480. And again, I'm just rounding that off to the 4th decimal place. And then I'm going to cross multiply. And I get 10.2. Because again, that is a side value for the length of y there. Okay, so do not get concerned when there are 2 variables there. You're just going to cover one up and then work with it that way. Okay, and then just continue to solve. All right, guys, if there's any part of this that you want to go back and rewatch, this was just a recap to kind of help you with the lesson. All right, good luck.